Hola, Aaron.
I've been waiting for this moment all my life.
I'm glad. I said hello to you, and instead of saying hello back, you just went with something about all your dreams coming true. It's all good. It's all good. Let's try that again. Hello, Aaron.
Hi, Mr. David.
There we go. All right, that's good enough. Hey, welcome to Music to My Peers.
Thank you.
We're gonna get into this. It's summer, so we're only doing this every so often, it seems. But yeah, so real quick, if you want to, we'll get the housekeeping stuff out of the way, and then we'll get down to business. So some of that housekeeping stuff, if you want to follow us, by us I mean myself, on Instagram and Twitter, it's at
sorry.
David to My Peers.
I have to like
okay.
you first before you're allowed to follow me.
Yeah, there you go. Aaron keeps his account private. You can follow Aaron on I was gonna say Twitter. No, on Instagram as well. Over at Aaron to My Peers. But I mean, I will say this: if you, I went through this myself. If you send Aaron a follow request, he will heavily scrutinize and judge you before making his decision.
I have an application process that I prefer to receive snail mail.
There's a whole application process. I like it. That's pretty good. That works. So man, it's been a while. Hey,
Yeah,
so
too long.
What's too long? I'd say. I was trying to think if we tried. Maybe we did try to book something, didn't we? Or maybe not. Maybe it was just we knew there was going to be a couple weeks here. But so, what's new in the world of Aaron?
Oh man, busy season of life. Just too much going on, and
if you say barbecuing, I'm
yeah, I'm barbecuing way too much. No, I wouldn't complain. I wouldn't complain about that.
That's fair.
No, just lots of company, and had a wedding a couple of weekends ago, and then we had my two nieces at our place. We had 5 kids here for 3 nights, and just lots of commitments. But now I'm on holidays, so party time.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, what are you doing for holidays?
We're heading out west, out to Vancouver.
Yeah. I was gonna say, wait a minute. As soon as I asked you that, I'm like, oh, we're kind of doing the same thing, actually. Pretty darn close, anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
That's too funny. Yeah. So, that's awesome. When do you leave, though?
Saturday morning.
Okay, so getting there.
Yeah, this will be nice. There. Still got lots to do for then, but yeah. Looking forward to just getting away
And this will be great because by the end of this episode, you're going to have all sorts of music to listen to. Maybe. I don't know. We're before we get too into it, we're talking about favorite compilations. And I don't know if there's a ton of compilations that are actually on music streaming services these days. But I don't want to get into that right now because I had to give you an update because this past weekend was quite the weekend because I had Punk in Drublic on the Saturday.
Oh man.
And then on Sunday I was in Calgary. So I live in Edmonton, so we drove a couple hours down to Calgary to see Moneen and Dashboard Confessional. And then Monday I survived an encounter with a bear. So it was it was a pretty
that might have been the most screaming out of both those shows.
I don't know, man. I was
David
a pretty
being
big
chased by a
Dashboard
bear.
fan.
Yeah.
You
should give the top 3 moments from each of those shows.
From each of the shows. Okay, so for Punk and Drublic, I'm gonna encompass the whole day in a top 3 moments sort of thing.
Yeah.
Moment number 3, coming in at number 3, would have to be Bad Religion and them playing. I'm gonna go with. I actually really, really like their new record, and when they played the song "Don't Lose Your Head," I thought that was pretty awesome. I was pretty pumped on that.
How did people respond to the new stuff? Does it seem like people were aware of it and knew it?
Yeah. I think, obviously, when you're talking about a band like Bad Religion, they have a catalog that goes back quite a ways with some actually pretty successful songs along the way too, right? So I mean, obviously, people weren't as on board with the new stuff as the older stuff because they've just known it probably most of their lives. But,
yeah, right.
But yeah, no, it seemed like, especially like some of like the quicker, like faster songs, because like Don't Lose Your Head's more of a mid-tempo song. But they played, what is I'm trying to think of the name of the first track off of the new album, Age of Unreason, but I can't, the name is escaping me, but it's,
I can't think of it.
Yeah, but it's like a faster song, and like, I mean, the place was going nuts for it. So yeah, Bad Religion, their set was pretty great. Moment number 2 would have to be, if I had to pick a specific moment, it would be during Less Than Jake, and they were playing. Terrible song titles are escaping me right now. The first song off of Rockview, Last One Out of Liberty City.
Oh,
I believe
man.
that's. Yeah, I think that's what they closed with. It was one of the last songs for sure. It was either, Last One Out of Liberty City was the last song, and like as kind of the song was wrapping up, about midway through, they had this guy come out, and he was wearing like some giant like mask of like a cartoon character sort of thing. I couldn't quite picture who it was or figure out what it was, but then he had like a toilet paper gun, so it was basically like a roll of toilet paper hooked up to like a leaf blower sort of thing, and it just blew toilet paper all over the place. It was pretty good. It was a good way to end the set. And the number one moment
leaving
would have
before
to be,
NoFX.
the number one moment would have to be the fact that it was a craft beer festival, and you didn't have to pay extra for the beer.
Oh, so it was like, just come and get as much as you want?
Yeah, I was 100% like, because going to any beer festivals in the past, it's like, yeah, you buy a ticket to get in, and then you buy tickets for drinks, right? Like, and you go around. And no, this one, we got in there, me and my buddy Chris, and we're like, oh, so where do we get tickets? And they're like, oh no, you're good. Like, just go. And so we showed up. We showed up right because there was like a VIP sort of thing where they got in an hour before the general admission doors opened. So we, people have been there for an hour or so, but we showed up at 1:00 when the doors opened. And when we first got there, it was funny because you could literally just like basically walk up to any one of the booths, and there wasn't really anyone. And you just be like, "Mom, I'm going to try that beer," and then you drink it, and move on to the next booth. "Mom, I'm going to try that one." So it was pretty great. But yeah, and then you kind of alluded to what I was going to say was like a runner-up sort of thing moment, was the fact that we for sure left before NoFX even took the stage.
Which I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but yeah.
Yeah, well, so I mean, yeah, I was there with a buddy. We both like, I don't mind NoFX. I'm not a big NoFX fan by any means. I've seen them a handful of times, so I was kind of like, you know what to expect.
Yeah, I've seen it once. That's enough.
Well, and so I was just like, by the time it rolled around too, there was like a half an hour changeover between Bad Religion and NoFX. And like, really, I was going to see Less Than Jake and Bad Religion. And so when they were done, I was kind of like, all right. Like, I would have happily, if Bad Religion played last, because I feel like there's a couple dates where they did or are, I would have gladly stuck through NoFX to watch Bad Religion. But since it was all done and we'd been hanging around for it was a while. It was a long day. I was just like, well, we could either go back out to the food trucks and get some food from the food trucks and then maybe come back in for some NoFX, or we could leave and go get tacos. And so we left and got tacos.
Nice.
But it was a really good day otherwise. Yeah, and actually somehow, some way, that was the first time I've ever seen Chicks Dig It live. Like, considering they're from the scene that I grew up in.
Right.
Somehow that was, and they were great. So entertaining. Like, I just loved how almost between every song, the lead singer would feel the need to like introduce like the members of the band again, or
awesome.
Just like refer to like, come on, give it up for Chicks Dig It. Yeah, we're pretty good. Like, just doing stuff like that. And then he had this running thing where I don't know if the drummer was new to the band or not, or if this has been like a gag that they've pulled for their entire existence. But he kept basically going on and be like, yeah, let's give it up for the drummer. What's his name again? And he was just like, kind of, oh yeah, Trevor or whatever his name was, right? And then like, they go. So they were kind of funny. They were goofy. But yeah, it was a good time. And then Sunday, we went to the Stampede and Monine and Dashboard Confessional. I would say,
so they were playing at the Stampede.
Yeah.
Oh, so I didn't realize that was a part of it.
Yeah, so like the Calgary Stampede, for those who are not in the know, I mean, its roots are obviously in the Stampede in a rodeo, like cowboy sort of stuff. But I mean, so it's a giant like fair and whatever with this rodeo stuff going on. But then they also have a stage that's sponsored by Coca-Cola. And so you pay your fee, your cost to get on the ground or whatever it costs for it. So it was $18 a person for
Wow.
adults. And then like, yeah, the Coke stage entertainment is always included in that. So, yeah, so it was an outdoor show. It was fun. I'd say the highlight number three of the night would have been, I don't know specifically. I will say Dashboard Confessional Screaming Infidelities because that's a good song. And I actually liked the way they played it more. They changed it up from the last time I saw them. So that was a bonus.
And was there lots of people there that seemed to know them?
Oh, for sure. Like
Yeah.
people, like that's the thing is people typically will show up for like, I mean, yeah, I knew myself a number of people who were there for that show specifically, and then they'll just kind of go, oh well, might as well, since we're here, we'll do some Stampede stuff around it, right? Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, like the crowd that was there, especially with a band like Dashboard Confessional, like they were singing along with everything, like they would
Yeah.
probably, any other regular show. And so yeah, I thought I liked Dashboard more this time than the last time I saw them, which was about a year and a half ago. Um, last time I saw them was in like a small club, probably a crowd roughly the same size, maybe a little bit smaller when I saw them last time. But the second highlight of that show probably was actually Moneen when they were playing The Passing of America. I leaned over to my wife and I said she'd never seen them before, and I've seen them a number of times. Like they're one of my favorite live bands, and I leaned over to her and I said, "This is going to get crazy," because every time I've seen them when they play that song, it's like it's always their last song and they just go off. Like I've seen them dogpile with like 15, 20 people like of the crew and whatever on stage as they're like singing this song and just going crazy. Like I've seen them do like Kenny the singer climb up on a stack of speakers and just full on like throw himself off of them and just like all sorts of stuff. So anyway, they're playing the song, and all of a sudden he puts his guitar down and he's just singing, and he's like, he's in the gap between the stage and the people, right? Like where the security stand.
Right.
And he's singing and putting the mic in some guys' faces and whatever. And it's a good time. And it's great because at this show they had cameras, like several cameras, so with screens, so you can kind of see what was going on. And then all of a sudden he climbs over the fence and he's in the middle of the crowd, like right by us. And he's got the microphone. He's like, all right, so he gets the crowd to do all these things, like hands moving one side to the other, like he's like stretching or whatever. And then he got everyone to split apart, like by a couple feet. So it was like created like an aisle, and he went down to the very end of it and then ran and like did a front flip, landing on his feet, and then just like grabs the microphone and starts singing again. I'm like, what is this? This is great. So the front flip was probably highlight number two. Highlight number one was the fact that we didn't get rained on. They were calling for like severe thunderstorm warnings and whatnot, and we could see the clouds, and we're like, great, here it comes, and the clouds literally, like, this was amazing. It was like they split and went right around us. Like it was like they got
awesome. That happens.
Yeah, they got heavy rains and hail in Calgary in different areas, but we got maybe 5 drops of rain at the Stampede, so it was great. So I like that my top 2 moments, like my top moment from each concert, actually had nothing to do with music, but
yeah, well, that's how it goes with shows. Lots of times it's the surroundings, environment, and people. And
yeah. And then on Monday, I used the term bear encounter rather loosely, but it was my wife and I on this trip, and we went to Kananaskis, so the Rocky Mountains, and we went for a hike. And as we were like driving out to where we're going for a hike, my wife's like, "Do you think we need bear spray?" And I'm like, I don't know, like whatever. Like we've gone for short hikes there before, but we were kind of doing one that was a bit longer and a bit more off the path or whatever. So we're like, she's like, maybe we should like stop at this store up here that was like at a park campground area and ask. And so I'm like, all right. So we pull in. She's like, lady inside's like, yeah, I'm pretty like paranoid about that, so I would grab bear spray. So we bought a can of bear spray and we go for this hike. And we actually stopped at one point, and I was like, oh, we should like try and get a picture of us and the mountains behind us. And of course, there's like nobody out there where we're at, right? So I was walking past this rock. I'm like, I'm just going to like lean my phone against the rock here and we'll take a picture real quick. So we kind of mess around a minute or two doing that, take the picture. We're like, great. Pick my phone up and my wife's like, oh, a bear. I'm like, what? And I turn around and I'm probably like 50 feet down the road. Like the path we're going on, this bear is just like wanders up to the road and then kind of saunters towards us a little bit and then crosses the road. And we're just like, well, we're just going to wait here. Yeah, it was not a real bear encounter, but we did meet some people further up the trail that encountered the bear, and it like kind of started going towards them and, you know, stood up on its hind legs. It was a black bear though, so it wasn't, you know, not like a big grizzly or anything like that. We weren't about to reenact that scene in The Revenant or anything where the grizzly bear drags Leonardo DiCaprio from here to there and everywhere. But so yeah, that's why I say I use the term bear encounter rather loosely.
It's still though, for most people that wouldn't be a very likely situation to happen. So
yeah, it was definitely neat. Like I've never been in a situation like that though, right? Where it's like, oh man, I'm just like sitting here. Here's this bear. Like I've seen bears on the side of the road when you drive through the mountains, sort of thing, right? Like, but yeah, this was just like, oh, here we are. And there ended up being another couple that were coming back from where we were heading to, like that were coming back toward that we saw, you know, a minute or two later, and we stopped and talked about it and whatnot. And it was fun, but yeah, so it was an adventurous weekend to say the least.
Yeah,
and
sounds awesome.
And over all of it, I didn't listen to any compilations.
In some retrospect, you did. You heard lots of different bands who some you probably discovered through compilations.
Sure. Well, no, probably not. I mean, maybe the closest would be like Less Than Jake, like actually discovering them through a compilation. But even then, I couldn't pinpoint. There is the odd like Less Than Jake song that I was like, I know this from somewhere, and I'm not 100% sure where. So I'm going to assume it was either a compilation or like a video game soundtrack or something along the line. So very similar, but so yeah.
Well, even if not discovered, they were on a lot of the comps.
Oh, for sure. All of them. Well, and one of my comps that I picked as one of my favorite actually featured Monine and Dashboard Confessional, who I saw at one show. So, yeah, the thing about getting ready for this episode, and I don't know about you, what your experience was with this, was like trying to find, like I'd remember a comp, like a compilation, and then I'd be like, oh, I should like listen to it, see what was on it. But like none of them, for the most part, are actually on, at least on Apple Music. I didn't look on Spotify, but I did have one that I found on Apple Music that I listened to a number of times. But other than that, I was like, man, I had to like look it up, and people would make playlists on YouTube for them, or you know, stuff like that. But so having said that, let's get into this. What is we didn't set out a specific number, I don't think, of how many compilations we're going to talk about. So how about you start the conversation? What are you bringing to the table for compilations that were influential, or ones like for you in discovering new music, or just ones that you really liked?
Yeah. Well, a few thoughts on. I actually still have the hard copy CDs of a lot of my favorite compilations, so I didn't have to go searching out. But I was at a citywide music garage sale a few weeks ago, and I was browsing through CDs. And it was funny, like, so I had this episode in my mind, and just how many of the compilations that I was thinking of were for sale there that people had it was just, you know, music that people donated, and then it costs a few bucks to get in. It goes towards a local radio station, whatever. But they had pretty much every compilation. Well, not every compilation that I loved, but like at least one out of the series. So whether it was, you know, Victory Records or the Atticus ones.
Right.
There was so many of them there, like some of the more obscure ones that I remember seeing back in the day because MXPX would be on it. And so it was funny just being reminded of, okay, like these are still in rotation and people are still, you know, getting rid of these or whatever. It's hard thinking so kind of going back on my thought, you know, compilations were such a huge part of finding music. And, you know, I would listen to a compilation as much as I would listen to one of my favorite CDs, because there was so much variety on it. Back then I didn't have a computer to be, making mix CDs or whatever it was, right? And so some of the my favorite compilations were just as good to me as actual CDs. Yeah, it was hard to pinpoint it because every label would have a compilation, whether it was then you have all the Warped Tour compilations, and so anyways, so my top series of compilations was Tooth and Nail, Songs from the Penalty Box, and I think that's a pretty kind of classic one. Yeah, I remember my dad, he went on a business trip to a city, and I asked him to stop and get me that first one. And that just opened up so many, because at that point I was probably only familiar with, maybe MXPX, Slick Shoes, some of the kind of the main punk bands that I would have been into. But that one also had bands like Strong Arm and Zao and Living Sacrifice, like bands that had, been around for a few albums at least, but now are, quite influential in those scenes. And I had never heard music like that. And so it was just such a cool thing putting on this CD, just assuming it's all going to be punk music, and then just hearing a band like Zao and just having no grasp of what was going on or what was the point of that kind of music. So it was just such a cool time of discovering and just different emotions and feelings towards music.
Yeah, Songs from the Penalty Box. I'm trying to think back, which one or which ones I had. So this is my main problem that I always had with compilations, especially as time went on, is being able to accurately identify which one was which sort of thing. But Songs from the Penalty Box,
was a lot of them, yeah.
Yeah, well, and I mean, they were. This is the one thing I really loved about compilations, and what I think makes them or made them work so well was that, I mean, nowadays you have, like you mentioned, streaming services and YouTube and different ways to discover music and hear music, which is great, because it's all there for you, right? But there was a time where compilations played a huge role in something being I can spend anywhere from, well, I think I bought the Cheapskates compilation by Tooth and Nail for $3, anywhere from awesome. $3 to $7 or $8 in there, and buy a compilation that I might buy because, as you mentioned, MXPX was on, or a band that I was familiar with, and then there's all these other bands, and you go, oh, this is an excellent opportunity to discover new music. And sometimes, yeah, I totally came out going, oh, I actually really like this band or that band, right? And but yeah, Songs from the Penalty Box, definitely. And I know there's so many people where those compilations played such a huge role for them in discovering new music.
Yeah, and those ones are especially special because they weren't I think there was, Tooth and Nail and Solid State and whatever other sub labels, but they put it all together. Years later they had, This Is Solid State, and kind of branched off to more specific. But I loved those ones because, yeah, like I said, I wasn't into heavy music when those came out. And who knows how much longer it would have taken for me to discover those bands. Maybe I never would have if they hadn't to put that on. And I think that's what's great about those is you can, be able to promote the bands and just kind of give that broader array of discovering. And I miss that about music now. Yes, there's a lot more access now, but I don't know if because you have access to everything, people aren't really looking, or they're not as eager to kind of find that artist that really not speaks to them, so to speak.
Yeah, it does. I mean, that played a big role, and I think because now everything is so easily accessible, and it becomes a little more disposable. So if you went and you spent $7 on a compilation album, you spent some time listening to it because you paid for it, right? I found I gave stuff more time to grow, even if it was just a simple full length album from a band, not a compilation or anything. But I gave it time to grow and time for me to appreciate it. Whereas now, I feel a lot of times I might be okay, this is great, and I'll add it and then I'll move on, and I don't
Right.
necessarily come back to it unless, the only time it's really, what I've noticed is like in doing this podcast, when we like focus in on albums and I make myself listen to them, whether it was something that I was familiar with before, or it's brand new, or it's something that, I had never really given a shot that we talk about, I all of a sudden grow to enjoy it more, right? Because music isn't necessarily going to, capture you immediately when you first press play, right? Some stuff does, but some stuff takes time. And so I think, when you talk about, like streaming is great and whatever, but you miss something about, buying music, like actually physical copies. I totally understand it. And compilations even played a huge role in that, because like nowadays the current compilation, the modern day compilation, is a playlist essentially, right?
Yeah.
Now that can be put together, by someone just picking their favorite songs and doing whatever, or it can be put together by a curator or whatever. And I mean, maybe it's not quite accurate to say that, in the fact that I don't know how many labels are themselves having someone put together a playlist. I'm sure it happens every now and then, but it's not like I'd be interested to see if like Tooth and Nail Records, since you brought them up, would do like something like that, where they're like, okay, let's say every either 4 months or 3 months, 6 months, whatever, like quarter of a year, third of a year, half a year, whatever. They're like, we're going to release, a new Tooth and Nail playlist that we've put together of artists we want you to check out. Maybe it would make more sense if it was just like every year or every 6 months or whatever. I'd be interested if labels started doing that, like almost bringing back a compilation, but it's purely just digital playlist form. And if there would be much traction to it, I don't know. Like, the idea intrigues me because it would literally cost them nothing, most likely, right? Especially if like those albums are already on the streaming service and they're just picking songs from them. But I don't know.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Songs from the Penalty Box, that is a classic for sure. What else? What else did you bring?
Well, I was just gonna say one thing that you said, just about spending time with music, with these compilations, 15, 20 years ago, because you'd only get however many new CDs a year, maybe just a small handful, you would spend time with it. So on that Songs from the Penalty Box, there were bands on there, like I said, that I probably wouldn't have listened to, but because that was my new CD for 3 months, I was going to spend time listening to it, whether I liked it or not, because I wasn't just going to listen to the 3 songs I liked. And it was interesting because, at first you hear, there was a few on there that I would basically like make fun of because either it was so heavy or it just sounded like something I didn't know. But then over time, it's like, okay, now I actually like this. It's making me intrigued to want to listen to more and explore more.
I'm kind of curious to know who some of those bands were that you made fun of that you came to like later.
Well, like a band like Zayo would have been one I remember on there, just being like, wow, like what is going on here? Like you can't even tell what he's saying. And I have the track list here. Well, even a band like 90 Pound Wuss, a punk band, but a bit kind of thrashier and grungier. Yeah. There was a song by a band called Warlord on there that was really obscure and had weird vocals. Clank, which was like industrial music.
Yeah. Which Songs from the Penalty Box are you looking at right now?
The first one.
Okay. Yeah. Because I want to say the one that I'd have to go look at the artwork. That's how I can always remember. Like, oh yeah, I want to say I had Songs from the Penalty Box 2. I feel like I've looked this up before, but yeah, no, but you're totally right. Like it was such a way to just like discover and like listen to stuff that you wouldn't necessarily give a chance, because like, we talk about all the different ways that you learn about new bands, right? Like I remember one of the biggest things that I would do when I was kind of growing up or whatever was like reading liner notes, and bands would thank other bands. You'd be like, oh, I should check this out. And especially if you started seeing specific bands on more than one band thanking them. But compilations, like, they played a huge role too, for sure. I'm just sorry, I was looking at these Songs from the Penalty Box artwork, and I'm like, wow, maybe I don't remember which one I had.
There was 5 of those ones.
Yeah.
So they went for a while, and I think the first two for sure were my favorite ones.
Oh,
Kinda
I for
after
sure,
that, and kind of fell
I
off,
for sure
but-
had 3 songs from the Penalty Box 3. Where the guy's like looking all sad on the cover. I wonder if that meant it was
Yeah.
like emo songs from the Penalty Box. But yeah, I'm sure I listened to especially the first 3 and maybe even 4. I don't know if I ever listened to 5 when I'm looking at the.
Yeah, there's
Oh,
some
there's
good stuff on
there's
it,
a
but-
volume 6. What? Songs from the Penalty Box, volume 6.
Wonder if
Learning
maybe that
things.
was just an online one.
Oh, maybe.
But they also, I
Maybe.
remember on those compilations, thinking of a band like Squad 50, when they signed new bands, they would
Yeah.
put them on those comps too. So it was a way I remember seeing like, oh, I didn't know Squad 50 signed to Tooth and Nail. I mean, they had changed their sound, their look completely, which I was really bummed out about. But
Right.
it was still a good way for them to introduce bands, and instead of waiting for
Yeah.
a full length, they could just put whether it was a demo or a pre-release song or something. And so that was
Totally.
always a cool way to connect with music too.
Yeah. So I don't know if you answered this, but did you have a favorite band that you know for a fact you discovered off of a Songs from the Penalty Box album?
Yeah, the Cooties.
Sure. Yeah.
I had not heard of the Cooties on there before.
Yeah. I'm trying to think with them if it was Songs from the Penalty Box as well, or because I mean obviously they were what 2/3 of MXPX, and then I think they had Dale Yob was in the band, who was eventually in
Right.
Slick Shoes, and I believe there was a guy from 90 Pound. It was a super group essentially of tooth and nail like punk bands, right? So
yeah.
I'm trying to remember if it was from Songs from the Penalty Box. That may have been where I actually first heard them, but was kind of familiar, like aware of who they were outside of that. But yeah, so that's a good one. I'm trying to think if maybe because I get a lot of things mixed, whether I heard of a band from like a compilation or looking them up, or if it was like from my cousins. Because I remember at one
okay.
point I had a couple cousins who were just as into punk as I was at the same time, and like hearing about bands from them and stuff and sharing. So because I was going to say one of them may have very well been Slick Shoes, but I also
Okay.
think that may have been through my cousin, but I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, did you what was next that you had for compilations that meant something to you?
The next one I have is the Fat Records compilations,
Okay, yeah.
specifically Life in the Fat Lane.
Sure.
So that was exposure to Lagwagon, Strung Out, Mad Caddies, No Effects, Consumed. Just that one. I think maybe my brother had got it. He was in the city, and at that point I was still pretty like just strictly Christian music, just because that's all I had access to or really knew of.
Yeah.
And so that came out in 1999. So that's when I was kind of getting a bit more exposure to that, and through my brother or through different friends that had albums that I wouldn't have known of otherwise, because there wasn't ads and the magazines I had, and so those are still bands and albums that I love. Good Riddance was on there too. That might have been
Right.
one of my first introductions to them, and so just a lot of bands that I've been listening to now ever since then. And they had I think like 10 compilations through that series or something.
Yeah, like I don't know if I ever really I was always familiar with them. I never owned one, so I couldn't like pinpoint any of the Fat Wreck compilations as being like, because like they like the short songs for short people, that was Fat Wreck too, right?
Yeah,
and then like fast songs for fast people, and yeah. I'm not. Yeah, they were. I remember always seeing them though, right? Like people always had them and whatnot. But yeah, I never, for whatever reason. Again, I didn't buy a ton. I typically bought compilations when I was like, oh, I really want some new music, and either A, I don't have money right at the moment, or B, like I can't convince my mom to give me money. Like I don't know how many times I showed up, like at a store, especially like Songs from the Penalty Box and Cheapskates and stuff like that, where like, so like there was a time where I had guitar lessons. I would go to guitar lessons, and then immediately after guitar lessons, my mom, because I lived in a small town, but my guitar lessons were in Calgary. And so we'd just kind of hang out for a little bit. And so my mom would take me and we'd go to a Christian bookstore and she'd be like, now listen, I'm not buying you anything. And so many times I was able to convince her to just buy me a compilation because I'd be like, Mom, it's like $4. Come on. And she'd be like, all right. And then she'd buy something. So like that's generally how I ended up with a good number of my compilations. But the Fat Wreck ones I never really got into outside of like listening to them with friends because they had them in their car or whatever, right? Like, but I mean, so many good bands on Fat Records though. Like, let's be honest here. So yeah, I can support that 110% about how those records played a role for sure.
Yeah. Let's hear some of your choices.
So, I mean, the biggest one for me, like, I mean, there's some classic ones in the sense where I thought about maybe talking about them a little bit, but, like the Big Shiny Tunes compilations.
Yeah.
For Canadians, especially Canadians growing up listening to more alternative music, they're almost legendary. Like they almost have a legendary status, especially a few of them, right? Like basically, I want to say Big Shiny Tunes. Yeah, Big Shiny Tunes 1 to 3, I would say, are like peak, especially Big Shiny Tunes 2 and then 3. But more specifically, the compilation that I found myself listening to the most in preparation for this, mainly because it's actually on Apple Music, I was so pumped about, is Another Year on the Streets, Volume 3, specifically by Vagrant Records.
Oh, yeah, I remember those for sure.
Yeah, and the amazing thing about that specific compilation, I don't know if they did this with the other volumes for this, but it came with a DVD with a bunch of music videos.
Yeah,
as well.
That was the best when comps came with those.
Yeah, and like this DVD wasn't specifically like it wasn't the videos weren't for the songs that were on the compilation. Most of the bands were on there, but it was more just like this is what we've had going on at Vagrant Records and music videos for the past year type thing, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, like that. I'm looking at the track list right now. And that's got to be wrong. I just noticed there's a song on here that says the song is Heaven by the band Heaven. But I'm like, I'm pretty sure the band is Alkaline Trio.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it's like Dashboard Confessionals on there, Hot Rod Circuit, Monine, Saves classics. The Day. The one song I tend to skip on this specific album, though, is From Autumn to Ashes, their cover of like Nirvana's Territorial Pissings.
Okay.
Like it's fine. It's live, so it feels out of place, I think is what the main thing is with it. No Motives on there, who eventually would become one of my favorite bands. Hey Mercedes. Like it's a lot of Get Up Kids on there. Like a lot of obviously like emo
not many heavy stuff. Bands or punk.
No, punk, yeah. Yeah, well, even like looking at it, I mean, like the most, I guess, punk band on there maybe would have been Alkaline Trio, but even then they had like, and then like the heaviest band would have been From Autumn to Ashes, but like yeah, that DVD I watched so many times. Like it was so good, and that CD I've listened to a bunch, but yeah, we talked briefly on our ska episode about the compilation 5 Years on the Streets by Vagrant Records, because that's how I heard of the Hippos.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, so that kind of got me into that series a little bit. But then I think it was volume... let me see here. Well, I think it was volume 2. Was it the volume before or the volume after? As I think out loud. Volume 2, yeah, came out the year before. It was really good too. A lot, more of the same bands, just different songs. Face to Face was actually on that one.
Oh yeah, they were on Vagrant, right?
Yeah, I think they're on Vagrant for just like one record, but one album. And that's that How to Ruin Everything, which I really love. And last I checked, the number of times I checked, it's not available on streaming services. And I was like, what? Come on. But so yeah, that specific series of compilations I really enjoyed. And then you mentioned earlier like the Warp Tour compilations.
Oh yeah, those were always great because they had like 50 songs on 2 CDs for $8
it was
or
2
whatever.
CDs.
However, I found when comps kind of got to that point, okay, go ahead.
Just a jump in update because I out of curiosity got me. Face to Face, How to Ruin Everything is now on Apple Music, so that's
nice.
Added that to my library. Yeah, what were you? Sorry, I cut
just
you
when
off
comps kind of got to so many artists and tracks that I found that there was less and less that I was interested in hearing.
Yeah.
Because it was, too broad, and they started, it was like rap artists or whatever. And
right.
So I kind of lost interest kind of as the years went on with those, but
yeah. But like Warped Tour, I think it was 2001, that compilation. It was 2 discs. And yeah, there's a bunch of stuff on there that, I mean, that's going to happen, right? When you, like you said, you have like 50 songs. There's bound to be some you don't like. But I remember listening to that, like that compilation quite a bit, and really actually finding that I liked Tsunami Bomb.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember? Yeah, that was the one where, I think her name's Agent. Is it? I can't remember.
Yeah,
She's got some stage
Agent
name,
M or something?
something like that. Yeah, yeah. But I really ended up, I was like, oh, this song is awesome, the song that was on there. But then I went and listened to Tsunami Bomb outside of that, and I was kind of like, it's not. Yeah. But that kind of brings up a question, though, as I was thinking about, preparing for this episode. Labels that would put out, specifically labels that would put out compilations, because sometimes, it would be some other group putting out a compilation. We could talk about magazines that had compilations that came with them, right? But
yeah.
But like labels that would put them out, you could either, like, I felt like they did different things. You either had ones that felt more like, they're like, this is our playlist of our current stuff that we really, are proud to put out, right? So, maybe you could say like Songs from the Penalty Box a little bit would be more of that, where they weren't necessarily using it purely to try and introduce you to new artists. That makes sense. Because that's like the other thing they could use it for, where they're like, okay, we're going to put some names on here that people know. Like we're going to get a couple, like say you brought up MXPX earlier, say MXPX is going to be on this as well as this other band, but then we're going to load it with a bunch of our, lesser known bands and try to, and so that's what I always appreciated about compilations. Although sometimes you'd put a compilation on that was designed to try and get your interest peaked on these other bands, and you'd be listening to it and kind of going, the compilation just doesn't quite do it for me. You know what I mean? Because you're like, it's not that playlist where there's like their best of the best sort of thing. It's more just like, we got a couple of names, couple of heavy hitters, and the rest you're going to have to figure out if you like them or not. But so it's kind of interesting to look at, the different uses for, because I also mentioned magazines and whatnot putting out. Did you ever buy magazines specifically because they came with a CD?
Well, I remember there was one in the States that, if I was ever down there, was called AMP magazine, and they would always come with one. But yeah, there was one called 7 Ball magazine. And those comps were always pretty good.
7 Ball is probably, so for those who are, unaware of what 7 Ball is, because 7 Ball was actually a magazine that was basically focusing on alternative Christian music sort of thing, right? So playing a part, they came, I don't know when they started exactly. I feel like they kind of came along after the boom had sort of started, and they're like, all right, we're going to be a part of this. But yeah, they released a CD with every issue of the magazine. I don't remember how often they had issues come out, if it was every month or if it was like every couple months or what. But
I think it was probably every couple months.
Yeah, I definitely owned, I never had a subscription to 7 Ball, but I definitely bought my fair share of 7 Ball magazine.
Yeah.
Actually, they're probably, I would say 7 Ball is how I kind of got into the Insiders.
Yeah, I can still picture ads in that magazine for them. And it was such a pretty genius way from the magazine, because it's like, hey, here's an ad for this new album coming out. Here's a song you can hear right now because you got the comp, and hopefully you'll go buy the CD, right?
Yeah, like the one I did have an issue with the Insiders on the cover, actually. That's I was to say, I think that's how would have been the one that obviously had them on the comp. But yeah, like I'm sure the first time I bought it, it may have been because there's something that caught my eye on the cover of the magazine, or it was literally because I don't, the way they had it, you couldn't flip through the magazine. Yeah, at least where I bought it, right? Yeah, it was in plastic because of the CD. So it's like you had to.
Yeah.
It's tricky in the sense that you got to kind of sell it by the cover, but also you have the compilation that comes with it. So I know I bought it at one point because I'm like, oh, it comes with a CD. This could be great, right? But yeah, and then like even I don't know if they still do it or not, but like Paste magazine at one point, they were a little more like indie alternative sort of stuff. But I remember buying a Paste magazine because it came with a CD as well. But yeah, no, it's a thing that I don't know if it even exists anymore, right? Like, I mean, obviously, you had all the runs of like the Punk Goes Pop and those kind of things that I never really got into. But
the
I don't know
Punkoramas
that
were great too.
Oh yeah. But I mean, those are going back to like that, like the Punkoramas would go back to like the peak of,
right.
all these compilations, like in the mid to late '90s and early 2000s. But I mean, part of that too, I think, is there's a couple things that work there. I mean, we're talking about punk rock and pop punk and skate punk, like all that kind of stuff. That really, like, that's when it, that was in its heyday, right? Like the skate punk sort of stuff in the mid to late '90s, and then the straight up pop punk sort of stuff in the late '90s to early 2000s. Like they were just unloading those, right?
Oh yeah,
like,
for sure.
That music was everywhere, so compilations worked. But also now, we don't live in a time where CDs are as big of a thing. Like you can obviously still get them, but I don't see a label being like, "Hey, let's put out a CD to sell," right?
Yeah.
For a compilation, I should say. Obviously, they're still putting out CDs of their artists that are releasing new music. But yeah, as far as compilations are concerned, I did get one. Now that I think about it, I ordered a record from, I don't know what label it was. I can't remember now. But this is the most kind of current example I can think of this. They sent with the record like a compilation CD of like all their bands, and I really wish I could remember what the record was that I ordered. But I actually really fell in love with a band on that compilation CD, and ended up buying their one of their albums on vinyl. And I was like,
what band was it?
Have you ever listened to the band Head North?
No.
They're kind of like their latest album that came out a couple of years ago now is they kind of shifted a little bit. I still really liked it, but stylistically they shifted. They were kind of more originally like in like a whole emo post-hardcore sort of vibe. I'm trying to think who I'd compare them to. I mean their music was kind of it was a little atmospheric, like reverbs and delays on their guitars, right. And I don't know, I just really liked them, specifically vocally. I was like, oh, it kind of has a unique voice. But yeah, I heard of them on this random compilation album that now I have no idea where it is because it came with something, got lost along the way, but they had a song on there. I was like, man, every time it came on, I'd put it back on again as soon as it was done. I was like, this is great. But and it wasn't even one specific label. It was like, now that I think about it, it was like 4 or 5 different labels provided a couple tracks, and so it showed you
interesting
what label the band was from. Yeah, now I really wish I could find this. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, there's probably some other good stuff on there.
Yeah.
But I probably got it when I ordered like a Knuckle Puck record or something like that, right? So
okay.
Yeah, but anyway, compilations they're pretty neat, I'd say they're neat.
Yeah. So besides the Vagrant one, do you have another one or another series?
I said like Warp Tour.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Sure, there were some other. Oh, you brought up like This Is Solid State. That was another one that they it came with a DVD. The one I had anyway.
Yeah,
which was pretty great. I don't know how many times I watched that DVD. Like music videos, I could just put them on and watch them. Right, like.
Well, and I've been doing that in my basement here with my setup here. I got a little TV, and I've been pulling out all the like CDs that had enhanced disc or whatever, and
nice.
My kids love it. Like I've got I think it was the second time they put out Let It Happen from MXPX. It came with a disc with all the music videos. And my daughter's always asking to watch that, and put that on, and so it's been fun to kind of revisit all those and to see how bad some of the videos and the production was, and but it just just reminds you of when you got it, because again, like maybe you had internet, maybe you didn't, or TV. Like I didn't have a lot of that, and so when you got a CD with all those, it's like, oh man, like this is amazing. Like because lots, you might see a picture of the band in magazines or whatever, but just to see them in a video, and then you start dressing like them, and so anyways, that's a whole nother thing. But I love that part of music.
Not that this was a compilation or anything, but I definitely, in a similar vein, absolutely loved. I think it was like the first 9 years it was called. It was like a Tooth and Nail DVD that had all of their music videos from the first no, it would have been the first 9 years, maybe the first 6 years. It was like because they started. When did they start? Or did they
Tooth
start
and
in
Nail?
91? Yeah,
93, 93, 94.
So maybe it
Maybe
was the
93.
first
I think
6 years.
that's when Poconacha came out.
Yeah, maybe it was the first 6 years because it was like the beginning all the way up until 1999. Anyway,
Yeah,
all the
I
music
remember
videos.
that. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty sweet. I really, really liked it. I don't have it anymore. I have so many things where I'm like, I don't even know what happened to that along the way. It's just disappeared. But that's all right. But yeah, I mean, like compilations, I don't know that I was really loyal to any one. Like, I know some people would be like, oh, you brought up Punkorama. Like, oh, did you get the latest Punkorama or whatever, right? Like, different compilations that were kind of regularly released. Songs from the Penalty Box would have been the closest, but even then, I maybe owned 2 of them at most.
Okay.
You just see friends would always have them.
Yeah, and as the years went on, and started getting older, and you're working, so you can buy more CDs. So I would, I would want, if I liked a band, I would buy the CDs. So as I got older and comps came out, I'd be like, well, there's 5 bands in there I like, but I have all those full lengths already, so
right.
I don't need to buy the compilation to listen to those songs.
Yeah. No, that's fair. Yeah, I don't know when I stopped going out and buying them. Probably once I was making enough money to just be able to afford to buy CDs on my own, not have to be like, oh, I've only got so much money, I should buy this comp or see if my parents will buy it for me.
Or once you had friends who had the internet and could burn you CDs, and
yeah,
it was like, oh man, I don't have to pay for this, and
yeah, right. That changed the game.
I don't have to pay $25 for a CD anymore.
Yeah, but now I'll spend that or more on a record, right?
Yeah, but that's a different thing now. That's
well, it's the pendulum, right? Like at one point, I don't know if a pendulum's an accurate representation, but at one point, it was like buying CDs. That was how you got your music, or maybe at the time buying cassettes, or before that buying vinyl. But then it got to a point where like we don't have to do that anymore. Like we can just have it all on our phone and access all of this stuff for one low monthly fee, right? And then you lose something in doing that. And we've talked, I could talk about this, and we've talked about this to no end, just how eventually you kind of go, well, I actually want something though, like I want to,
right.
I want to be able to hold something and look at something. So that's how vinyl came back around for me. And like kind of getting into that, but at the same point, I wonder if I would have ever bought like a vinyl compilation. You know what I mean? Like just the idea of that, I'm kind of like, I'm sure they exist.
Yeah.
In fact, I know they exist because they were selling like Punk and Drublic vinyl at Punk and Drublic, where it was just, I'm assuming it was like the compilation maybe of all the different bands that were playing the festival this year. But
yeah, I can't imagine those would be a big seller.
Well, I did see one guy standing there holding it. He bought it. I was like, oh,
there you go. It was all worth it.
There you go. They made it all back on that one guy who was funny because he didn't see, because there was a Fat Wreck booth as well where they had like just generic Fat Record shirts and hats and whatnot.
I should have told you to get me one of those.
But then they had a couple boxes of Fat Records vinyl that they had, I guess, had been, it was just like overstock that had been found in a storage room that they didn't realize, so they were just bringing it out on tour and selling like this random collection of Fat Record releases. And so like my buddy, he bought 3 Lagwagon records.
Oh, awesome.
Like what did he get? He got Haas, he got why am I all of a sudden drawing a blank? He didn't get Let's Talk About Feelings, though. That was
that would have been amazing.
Yeah, he ended Double Platinum he got, and then what's the one? It's like the green cover with like the guy sitting on the couch, I think. Anyway, or like in front of the TV. He got those 3. I got Face to Face Protection because I'd like gone through, and then I was like, I saw there was a Descendants record in there, but I wasn't looking through. Like I was just kind of peeking over my buddy's shoulder, and I was like, yeah, whatever. And then I thought later, I was like, I should go back and look and see which Descendants record it was. And when I went back, it was gone. So I just ended up with Face to Face. It was like, whatever.
It's a great
Speaking
record.
of Descendants, are you going to go to Winnipeg to go see Descendants?
Yeah, my cousin bought the tickets. So
oh, really?
I make my way there, and
that's awesome. I was like, when did you get tickets? How long ago was that announced? I just saw it like today, so I didn't know if it was a new announcement or not.
Oh, it was a few weeks. At least a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe even a month ago.
I was like throwing it out there as a joke. It turns out, yeah, you're going, which I think maybe you probably actually told me. Or had you seen them before?
No, I hadn't, but I had mentioned it to you because then
Yeah.
soon after that Bad Religion got announced. And so I was really excited to get to see two bands and
right.
Different times. But anyways, didn't end up getting to see Bad Religion. So
yeah. They were good. The downside was for Punk and Drub. Like it was like an upside and a downside. Is that because it had been raining so much leading up to it, where the show was, like they had the option to do it indoor or outdoor, so they moved it to inside because, it's been raining, it's supposed to rain that day, so we'll move it inside. It was funny because it ended up not raining until like the very end of the day. So it would have been a nice day and probably would have sounded a lot better. Because inside was the room they moved into was just like a giant concrete box. It was pretty loud, but whatever. It was nice not having to think about that either. Going like, what's the weather going to do? Or, oh, it's so hot, I should have grabbed sunscreen, or like all that stuff. And then plus they also had coat checks when we bought our vinyl and T-shirts and stuff.
Oh, nice!
T-shirts from some breweries, we could go check it. We're like, oh, it was great. But yeah. So anyway, I think that's gonna. Unless you had any more compilations you wanted to talk about, I think that'll wrap this episode up.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons, but it's more just for interest's sake.
There you go. Yeah. So to wrap it up, wherever you're listening to the podcast, make sure you subscribe it, make sure you rate it, review it, that kind of stuff, and tell your friends about it so we can get it in some more ears and spread the word. And like I said earlier, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at David to my peers. If you want to attempt, the scrutiny and the whole application process that it is to follow Aaron on Instagram, it's at Aaron to my peers. I'm kidding. There's no scrutiny or anything. It's private, so you just got to request the ability to follow him. So no bots shall follow Aaron. That is the rule. If you are a bot, you can take off. That's what we'll end on. So there you go. That'll do it. We'll be back sometime. It's summer, so we're doing this when we can do this. But yeah, adios.
See ya.